Hello friends, it's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums today with a 2026 year ahead spread. And I did one of these kind of readings last year at the beginning of 2025 or before 2025. So I figured I would do one to kind of see what will 2026 bring as a collective for many of us and things to just kind of keep in mind. So this is a spread by dailytarotgirl.com. I'll put the link in the description so you guys can go and check it out. I thought it was an interesting way of doing a year ahead spread. So let's get into it and see what 2026 will bring us as a collective. All right, so first card is going to be the opening message. We have the Eight of Swords. All right, so what will help you thrive will be card number 2. We have the Seven of Pentacles reverse. And then card number 3 will be what are our new horizons. We have the past card. We're going to put that off to the side. Reversed. And then the Knight of Cups. For card number 4, we'll do what do we need to release and start over. Kind of feel like this one. The Ace of Pentacles. 5 will be the main purpose and focus for 2026. We have the Hierophant or the Wise One in this deck. All right, what do we need to embrace? We have the Queen of Coins, the Queen of Pentacles. All right, hopefully everything will fit. What are our obstacles for card number 7? We have the Queen of Wands reverse. What supports you in 2026? That'll be the Three of Wands. And then the closing message. We have the Queen of Swords. Lots of queens. Lots of queens here. So let's see, we can kind of get everything in focus here. All right, I'm gonna just use my pendulum to make sure I pulled everything in the way that it wants to be pulled. Okay, there it goes. So that's fine. All right, so we don't want this one reversed. Okay. So those go together. Okay. Fine, fine, fine. Maybe. All right, there we go. I'm making everything crooked. Okay. All right, so we have a lot of queens here. Very interesting energy. All right, so let's kind of do an interpretation. So the opening message being the Eight of Swords is, I think in a lot of ways, maybe how many of us kind of felt in 2025. I have heard so many different perspectives and a lot of people kind of feeling like 2025 was extremely challenging, was very difficult, a lot of forced personal growth, I guess would be like the nicest way of putting it. And I know collectively it was a 9-year, and it was also like the year of the snake in Chinese, like using the Chinese zodiac. So I know that can typically be a reminder of how challenging and how many different things we have to kind of go through in order to kind of shed what is no longer necessary. And I know transformation, metamorphosis, rebirth can just be a very challenging thing for many people. I know 9 years can be personally very challenging. It can really require us to kind of sit with ourselves and look at the things that we need to let go of so that we can kind of move into the next thing. So with 2026, it will be a 10-year or a 1 year, depending on who you want to follow with, you know, the numerological kind of influence. And 10s can be very much about the culmination of everything kind of coming together. And while it can signify kind of moving into like the next phase, it is very much about reflecting on all of the experiences that we've had in order to kind of move into the next thing, if that makes sense. Versus a 1 can just be an experience. It can kind of be very much this energy of like the new beginnings, a new adventure, doors opening. And I feel like sometimes we forget like 10 is also a very significant number in numerology, because we have the 1 and then we also have the 0, which can be all and nothing, like no thing. It is everything. It kind of encompasses everything all at once. Now, the 8 of Swords, to me, can be very much a card of like feeling a little bit helpless, a little bit hopeless, kind of feeling like there is this sense of not really seeing things quite so clearly because you're too caught up in like the mental anxieties, the things that have created a lot of this sense of overthinking and overanalyzing. I think for many of us, when we're kind of caught in the middle and don't really know which way to go, we kind of freeze and we're not really actively making the best choices for ourselves. So I think that this being like the opening message, like this is pretty much kind of describing the energy of 2025 for many of us, where we're kind of feeling like I am having to react versus like choose how I want to kind of go into the next thing. And I think that this can be collectively a kind of heavy sort of energy for many of us, because we're struggling a little bit with, what will this look like moving forward? How will this define what I want to do? And I think, I don't know about you guys, but I know I've been a little bit more overly cautious with how I kind of put myself out there in some ways. I've been very like kind of keeping to myself, not being so out loud with like the things that I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to put my energy into, what I'm focusing on. And it isn't that like I've never really been big on like resolutions and things like that. I feel like that puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on an individual. I will say that there was like certain things that I tried in previous years only to have them be very challenging personal years for me. So it kind of like deflated my sense of like that, I can be hopeful. So I totally understand this sense of feeling a little bit helpless, a little bit hopeless, not really knowing what will come next, what it'll look like. A lot of us are just kind of feeling stuck in the energies and the heaviness of 2025, and maybe even just taking in consideration what's kind of happening on the world stage, not really knowing, what comes next and how that's going to look. So I think the opening message isn't to say like, this is how we're going to remain in this energy. I think if anything, it's kind of saying like, what we've experienced is valid. Now it's time to kind of move out of that darkness, move out of that sense of not really seeing things quite so clearly. So for card number 2, we have what will help you thrive. And we have the 7 of Pentacles, or the 7 of Coins in this position. And I feel like this is very much a card of like awaiting the results, awaiting the harvest. Like we have done everything we needed to. We've put in the hard work. We've put in the effort. We have, learned to manage ourselves. We have done the things necessary in order to kind of reap the fruits of our labor. And I think that for many of us, we're still kind of in this transitional phase of not really seeing quite so clearly what our hard work is kind of going to garner us. In some ways, it's like, not every seed that you plant will bloom or sprout, and be successful. And so I think that's kind of the energy of this card. It's like, it's almost saying like, maybe we need to be a little bit more patient. Maybe we need to be a little bit more understanding of like, where we're focusing our energy, what's kind of the focus for us, what we really need to pay attention to, what that means for us in the long term. So I think the energy for this card is that maybe there may be things that we have been doing for a long period of time. And now we're starting to see like, okay, there's a potential here, but we're not quite there yet. And I think that's kind of the energy of, you know, maybe 2026. And I think it kind of goes in with that, like, I want to just get up and go and just have it happen versus like being a little bit more patient, kind of taking a step back and kind of looking at, okay, what have I been working towards? What does this really mean for me overall? And how will this look for me in the future? Now, I did have this extra card kind of pop out. So this is the past card out of another deck that I kind of put in here. And the New Horizons, and we have the Knight of Cups. Now, I did pull this reverse, so we'll kind of read it as a reverse meaning. Now, the past, I think, is really, and it being reversed, I feel like maybe there's some things that we have been trying to heal, some things that we've been uncovering, we've been kind of like digging into, basically, in some ways. And we're starting to see how maybe a lot of this energy has affected where we're at. And with the New Horizons being the Knight of Cups, when I think of the Knight of Cups, I think it's very much this energy of someone who is ready to kind of move out into the world with their heart on their sleeve, someone that is very focused on their intuition, their connections, how they feel. And I think it's very much about looking at how we're showing up, not just for ourselves, but also like, what kind of message are we leaving behind? And I think with the New Horizons is that maybe it's time for many of us to kind of say, all right, I have taken everything that I needed from my past. It's time for me to move forward and to kind of walk into the next thing, to kind of romanticize my own life in a new way and not be so caught up in like what hasn't worked, or maybe even being a little bit more aware of like what we can do with this energy. So I think with this New Horizon is that we're kind of moving out of this like helplessness, this hopelessness. You know, we've been waiting, we've been doing the work, and now we can finally move forward and explore in a way that is heart-centered, or maybe even allowing ourselves to kind of be a little bit more intuitive, to be a little bit more imaginative and creative, and allow ourselves to really kind of feel into this next thing. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of feel like the last couple of years have been more about just kind of like physically showing up and just kind of going through the motions in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of us are kind of feeling that big disconnect between ourselves and our heart. And so it's kind of asking us to kind of move into this next thing. So moving on to what we need to release and start over, we have the Ace of Pentacles. So the Ace of Pentacles, with this being what we need to release and start over, is that maybe we need to let go of this need to have things look a certain way or be a certain way. And I think that maybe this year will be one where we feel like we are finally able to plant some new seeds, right? Kind of like that Seven of Pentacles kind of energy of like, you know, what's going to help us thrive is like the patience while we're planting the new seeds. So maybe we need to kind of release our expectations about it has to look a certain way. Maybe a lot of us have put a lot of pressure on what we feel should be happening or how our lives should look. And I know that's very prevalent with online social media, you know, kind of feeling like we have an online presence, an online persona, so to speak. And I think that this is kind of saying like we need to release and start over. It's time for us to kind of let go of what we feel like it should look like and what it'll be like. So I know it's hard to kind of release and surrender and kind of move into the next thing. So especially if you feel like you've had this happen repeatedly, or you're like, I have been letting go and I have been starting over and I have been doing this. This can be an opportunity for us to kind of explore some other way to build the sort of life that we want. when I think of Pentacles, there's also this kind of connection to like our behaviors. So maybe it's kind of saying like, hey, we got to kind of change how we've been behaving. We need to change, you know, how we view our physical manifestation of the life that we've created. So there is a lot of opportunity for us to plant some new seeds, even if we don't always know or should expect how it's going to look moving forward. So I do think that the Ace of Pentacles, being where we need to release and start over, is having that understanding that not everything is going to look the way that we thought it was going to, and we just have to kind of move into this energy. So for our main purpose and focus in 2026, we have the Hierophant, or the Wise One, in this deck. Now, the Hierophant to me is very much a card of like learning and teaching and governing agencies and the traditional kind of the more in a lot of ways of having an understanding that there is this like higher knowledge that we're meant to kind of have an understanding of, but also having the wiseness, I guess, or the wisdom that we don't always know everything, that we're here to kind of learn as much as we are willing to kind of impart our own lessons with others. So I think the main purpose and focus in 2026 will be very much about, you know, what are you learning? What are you teaching? How are you sharing? Are you kind of finding your own traditions? Are you finding things that feel like they're governing you in some way? So it can be very much about like what structures, what foundations have you been laying, and does that make sense for like what it is that you want for your life long term? So I think having this as our main purpose and our main focus is very much about taking all of these other things that can feel very challenging, can feel a little bit confusing, and give us a little bit of that sense of what we're doing with our lives. So for what we need to embrace, we have the Queen of Coins. I'm going to cover her because she's kind of a little sexy on this card, or the Queen of Pentacles. So we need to embrace nurturing ourselves in our spaces, with our physical health, with our behaviors, with, you know, understanding that we are here to experience a physical manifestation of spirit in a lot of ways. And so we're kind of given an opportunity here to look at who we are and to really understand what that means for us long term. Because when I feel into the energy of the Queen of Pentacles, I feel like it's very much about, you know, what have we been doing? How have we been showing up? Have we given ourselves that opportunity to really feel at home with the life that we're building for ourselves? And if we haven't, why not? Why haven't we been paying attention to this sort of energy? So I think with embracing this is that it's almost saying like, do you have a foundation for yourself that feels comfortable and lush and supportive of what you want and what you need? And if not, how can you take some steps to kind of make it so? Because that is the thing with the Queen of Pentacles, is that she will prioritize what makes her happy, what makes her feel, again, kind of like that lushness, that sense of home, that sense of really showing up as like what you want and who you are and what you need. All right, so moving on to the obstacles, we have another queen. We have the Queen of Wands. Now, the Queen of Wands is typically to me like the mover and the shaker, the, you know, kind of showing up and like doing what she wants to do. And there's like this very magical element to it, you know, almost like she is the witch in a lot of ways. And so with this being, you know, a card that really talks about our obstacles, is that maybe inherently we haven't really understood our own personal power, how magical we truly are. Maybe we're just not really paying attention to some of these lessons. And so I feel like with the Queen of Wands being in this like obstacles position, is that maybe our faith has been tested to the point to where we've forgotten, you know, maybe some of like the things that feel naturally beneficial for us, the things that feel like they make sense for who we are, what we want, and what we have been doing. So I feel like the Queen of Wands here in the position of our obstacles is that maybe we've been too busy just being busy, that we haven't really focused on, well, what is all this busyness for? Or what is it that I've been working and focusing on and trying to like make shit happen for, you know, like what is the reason for all of the, not to say commotion in a negative way, but like all of the just trying to hurry up and kind of get to the point of things. If we're not really doing it from a place that comes as like, I understand how powerful I am. I understand my own personal magic. I know my purpose. I know why I am focusing on certain things, because I feel like with wands, their creativity in the sense of like momentum, movement, inspiration, they can be very much like spirit kind of moving through us. And I feel like maybe the obstacle has been that we haven't really been living in spirit, in the things that inspire us. And so we've been just, again, kind of going through the motions, or maybe not tuning in and paying attention to what this all looks like and feels like for us as individuals. Now, for the next card, we have what supports you in 2026. We have the Three of Inspiration, or the Three of Wands. To me, this is a card of new horizons, in the sense of making the strategies and the plans to kind of go out and see what it is that you want. Have you been tuning into your like motivation? Have you been tuning into the things that make you feel connected and inspired? Now, threes to me in tarot can be very much the energy of coming together, communication, community, you know, kind of building that up. So I feel like for many of us, we've been a little bit more solitary. We've been a little bit more focused on who we are as individuals, what we're doing as individuals. And this is kind of saying like, we got to kind of find the things that support us so that we can kind of move into this next thing. So maybe it's time for us to kind of pay attention to, you know, what sort of plans have we made? Are we, you know, building from a sense at a place of really being strategic with like who we are, what we want, what we need. So I think the Three of Inspiration, or the Three of Wands, is here as like this is what will support you, is showing up in this energy, finding a way to like kind of make a plan for like what you want. And like I said earlier, so previous years, I have kind of taken a step back from like making a plan as far as like what I wanted to do for myself for like the year, where I would like to be at. And even though I'm like, I haven't built anything super concrete like that, I still have like little expectations that I kind of place on myself. And so like, I know like for 2025, like this year, I've been kind of like, oh, I really wish I would have done, you know, X, Y, and Z. I didn't really get a chance to do a lot of these things by my own accord. Free will is still, you know, something that we all have. And because of opportunity, or because of the choices that I was making. So I feel like the Three of Inspiration, being like what's going to support us in 2026, is that we need to kind of put ourselves out there and make that plan. Sorry, my light just probably died. Yeah, it's dead. And so I think it's kind of saying like, hey, we need to kind of pay attention to, you know, our plan, our energy, and what we're doing with that. Yeah, it's just going to keep dying. All right. So finally, for the closing message, we have the Queen of Swords, another queen. So that's why I'm like, maybe this year will be more about like that feminine energy of showing up in our own sense of sovereignty in a lot of ways. Now, feminine isn't just like women, right? Or, you know, it's feminine energy. We all have feminine and masculine energy within ourselves. So really kind of taken into account of, you know, what does that mean for you personally? So I feel like our closing message being the Queen of Swords, I think it's more of like, we need to kind of go into it being honest. We need to be blunt. We need to cut away from any kind of bullshit that has been holding us back. We need to be aware of, you know, how truly powerful we are and nurture that in a way that makes sense for who we are as individuals and what that means for us in the long term. So I think 2026 is maybe going to feel a little bit more empowering, and a little bit more of like, are we nurturing the things that we value? Are we paying attention to, you know, what we've learned, what we're teaching ourselves? Are we kind of going into things that make sense for our heart? Are we, you know, ensuring that the things that we have done, the hard work that we've kind of put into play, that we have nurtured it to the point to where it can be something that is successful for us as individuals? So I do think overall the energy is very much kind of saying like, I'm putting this back in your hands. And I know for many of us, like the last couple of years have felt very much out of our hands. I don't know about you guys, but I know 2024 kind of kicked my butt. 2025 has been, for me personally, a year of a lot of like, you know, trying to find a balance and harmonizing in some ways. And so I'm really hoping that 2026 is one where I can look at the next step and see a redefinition of like everything I've done in the last like 15 years, because it always feels like we're just going through all the lessons and trying to learn all the things. So let me know what you guys think of this 2026 year ahead spread, and if it resonates for you, or if you have questions, please let me know down below. I want to say thank you so much for joining me. Please take care, stay safe, and I wish you a beautiful and blessed 2026, friends. All right, bye.